More on the president's regulatory reforms. What will they mean for financials? Our next guest has his concerns. Joining us now is top-ranked analyst Mosche Orenbuch of Credit Suisse. Mosche covers financial stocks, and he is joining us live right now from Credit Suisse offices in Manhattan. Mosche, always great to talk to you. So Obama has laid out the whole enchilada. Assuming this makes it through Congress, the current plan, where do you see the biggest challenges to some of the financials?
Well, I think the challenges are fairly broad-based because for regulated institutions, I mean, many of the regulatory elements of this are already part of the process, but there's quite a number. I mean, I think their customers are going to end up with higher costs as you push many of these initiatives through.
One thing in particular that we've heard from some other guests has been the capital requirements. That being said, the banks just can't make as much money on loans, and therefore, as you alluded to, they have to make it up somewhere. They're going to pass it along to the consumer.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think a good analog is the Credit Card Practices Act that passed recently, and we would think that the size of the credit card business will shrink and profitability will shrink as well.
And I'm assuming you feel like that's dangerous when a lot of people are saying one of the next shoes to drop could be a credit card crisis.
Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is if you have to look at the unintended consequences, and if you actually shrink credit availability, you know, I think you've given up some of what you were hoping to achieve with that legislation.
Mosche, which companies will feel the impact more keenly than others?
Well, you know, the ones that will feel it most keenly will be the ones who actually are outside, generally, of my coverage, the ones who would make that list of Tier 1 financial holding companies but aren't currently in the regulatory regime. I think that's where you'd see it most keenly. I think within my coverage, you might want to look at the companies that are not bank holding companies right now, but would be compelled to become bank holding companies under that type of regime.
Can you give us a quick list?
You know, we really don't have a list prepared, but I mean, I think if you know, there are a number of companies that own either credit card banks or ILCs or trust banks that aren't currently bank holding companies. You know, Sallie Mae comes to mind. You know, is one that would have to come under this, and it's been reported in the press that GE could fall under this as well.
What are the proposals to you that seem maybe smarter? We've talked about one of the ones that you think is going to be a threat to current banking models. What about one of the recommendations that you think is a good idea?
Well, I think the rules on securitization are a good idea, and most of these things are good ideas. They're just very, very sweeping, and the premise is, number one, that we haven't really looked too much at what the other consequences might be. It sort of reads like, well, we had this problem in the last year, so let's propose this solution, without saying, well, what are the other consequences that would come about as a result of that?
How calm do you think the banking community is going to be? I mean, are there just going to be lobbyists descending on Washington, D.C. right now?
Well, this is pretty broad, so there's something in it for everybody, so that's probably a fair assessment.
All right. What about getting back to some of these unintended consequences? Just name the worst-case scenario for any one of them.
Well, I think what the worst-case scenario, which, I mean, if you go back to the beginning of this year, what the administration was trying to do was ensure that there wasn't a cutoff in the supply of credit. And I think, as I alluded to before, you could have that right now in the credit card business. I think that's developing, particularly for people at the lower end of the credit spectrum. So I think, you know, you could be taking credit away from the people who need it the most, and I think you'll probably see that happen, whether it's in terms of the price of credit or the availability. That will become a broader, you know, a broader issue if all of those recommendations are actually implemented.
Do you think that the banking community will take a page and say, okay, we need to police ourselves better? Do you think that's going to be one of the unintended positive consequences from the credit crisis?
Deirdre, I guess that the way this document reads is it seems to be a step beyond that already. In other words, I don't think they're giving them that opportunity. It's pretty broad-based and puts a lot of additional regulatory structure in place.
All right. Mosche, we do thank you. Mosche Orenbuch there from Credit Suisse.